My name's Daniel, and this is a story I never wanted to tell. But sometimes, keeping things bottled up only makes it worse. This is about me, Mia, and a house that nearly destroyed everything we had. I met Mia during our sophomore year of college. She was the kind of person you noticed immediately, always curious about the world, passionate about history, and somehow, she made every subject fascinating. I was the quiet type, more into books than people, but she dragged me out of my shell without even trying. She had this energy that made you want to be better, you know. We fell hard and fast. By the time we graduated, it was like the rest of the world didn't matter as long as we were together. Our dream was simple. We'd build a life that was ours, no matter what it took. Problem was, life didn't exactly roll out the red carpet for us. Jobs were scarce, money was tighter than ever, and we were pretty much living on ramen noodles and sheer optimism. Then, out of nowhere, I got a letter about an inheritance. My grandfather, someone I'd barely known, had passed away and left me his house. I hadn't seen the guy since I was a kid. All I remembered was that he was this stern, reclusive man who didn't really do family. Still, the timing felt like fate. Mia thought it was a sign too. "We could actually have a home, Daniel," she said, her eyes lighting up. "Think about it. No more crappy apartments, no more noise from neighbors. Just us." I wasn't so sure. I'd heard stories about the house, how my grandfather was obsessed with it, how he never let anyone inside. But Mia was right, we didn't have many options. So we packed up what little we had and drove out to the middle of nowhere to see it for ourselves. The house was, well, it looked like it had seen better centuries. This old Victorian thing with peeling paint, a front porch that sagged in places, and windows that felt like they were watching you. Mia, ever the optimist, brushed it off. "It's got character," she said, already imagining how we'd fix it up. Inside, it was even older than I'd expected. Dust-covered furniture, faded wallpaper, and this weird mix of charm and unease. But Mia saw potential in every corner. She ran her hand over the banister, like it was a treasure she'd just discovered. "This could be beautiful," she whispered, and for a moment I believed her. That night, as we were unpacking, we found it, a note pinned to the wall in the hallway. It was handwritten, the paper yellowed with age, and it had a title that sent a chill down my spine. Rules for the house. Mia read it aloud, her voice playful at first. 1. Do not hum or sing inside the house. 2. If you hear knocking from inside the walls, do not respond. 3. At exactly 3 a.m., place a cup of tea on the dining room table. Do not drink it. 4. Do not close the bedroom door completely at night. 5. Never enter the basement. 6. Do not answer the phone after midnight. She raised an eyebrow at me. "Creepy much?" I laughed it off, but something about the list made me uneasy. "Probably just some weird family joke," I said, even though I wasn't sure I believed it. Mia grinned. "Well, let's follow the rules, just in case. I don't want to wake up cursed or something." I rolled my eyes, but deep down, I was glad she suggested it. Better safe than sorry, right? The first few days in the house were interesting. Mia was like a whirlwind of positivity, talking about paint colors and furniture layouts, while I tried to wrap my head around the fact that we were actually living there. She even started calling it our castle, which was a stretch, but it made me smile. We found all kinds of strange things as we cleaned up. Old photographs of my grandfather standing alone in front of the house, a rusty key that didn't seem to fit any locks, and a collection of books about the occult. Mia joked about how we should open a museum of weird family history. At night, though, the house felt different. It was quiet, too quiet. You know how some places just feel alive, like they have their own pulse? This house had the opposite vibe. It was like it was holding its breath, waiting. One night, Mia was in the kitchen unpacking while I wandered into the living room. That's when I heard it, a faint knock like someone tapping from inside the wall. I froze, my heart racing. It came again, and that's when I remembered the second rule. If you hear knocking from inside the walls, do not respond. I stood there, holding my breath, waiting for it to stop. Eventually it did, but I didn't tell Mia about it. She'd been so excited about the house, and I didn't want to ruin it for her. The next night, Mia decided we should start sleeping in the master bedroom. It was massive, with this old four-poster bed that looked like it belonged in a museum. As we were getting ready to sleep, I reached for the door to close it out of habit. "Wait," Mia said. "What about the rule? Don't close it completely." I paused, feeling a little embarrassed. "Right. Good catch." We left the door open a crack, and I tried not to think about how the shadows in the hallway seemed to stretch further than they should. By the time 3 a.m. rolled around, we were both wide awake. I don't know what it was, maybe the unfamiliar bed, maybe the creaks and groans of the old house, but neither of us could sleep. When I glanced at the clock and saw it was 2:59, I felt a chill. "Should we do the tea thing?" Mia whispered. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We got up, made a cup of tea, and placed it on the dining room table like the note instructed. It felt ridiculous, standing there in the dark, staring at a cup of Earl Grey, but neither of us wanted to laugh. When the clock hit 3 o'clock, nothing happened. The tea sat there untouched. Mia looked at me, her expression half amused, half relieved. "See? No big deal." But as we walked back to the bedroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. By the time a week had passed, the house felt different. I didn't want to admit it, but the rules were getting to me. Every creak, every shadow, every little noise made me jump. Mia, on the other hand, seemed completely unbothered. She treated it all like an adventure, which I loved about her. She'd hum while unpacking, making little jokes about the house, like it was just another chapter in our story. One afternoon, we decided to tackle the basement door. Not go inside, of course, never enter the basement. That was Rule 5. But the door itself was an eyesore, scratched and scuffed, with an old iron lock that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Mia thought painting it might make it less ominous. "I'm telling you," she said, holding up a paintbrush, "a fresh coat of white, and no one will even notice it's a basement door." I wasn't so sure. Something about that door made my skin crawl. Every time I walked past it, I felt like it was daring me to open it. Still, Mia had a way of convincing me, so we got to work. As we sanded the old paint, I noticed something strange. There were deep gouges in the wood, like claw marks. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just wear and tear, but Mia saw them too. "Maybe your grandfather kept a bear down there," she joked, though her laugh sounded forced. We finished painting and locked the door again, but the unease stayed with me. That night, when we went to bed, I found myself listening for noises, half expecting something to start pounding on the other side of that door. It was close to midnight when the phone rang. I shot up in bed, my heart racing. The phone was one of those old rotary ones that came with the house, sitting in the hallway. It hadn't rung once since we'd moved in. Mia and I exchanged a look, neither of us moving. "Don't answer it," she whispered, clutching my arm. I didn't need the reminder. Do not answer the phone after midnight. That was Rule 6. The ringing felt like it went on forever, echoing through the house. I stared at the clock. 12:07. Who the hell would be calling us at this hour? When it finally stopped, we both let out a shaky breath. "I hate this," Mia said softly. "I hate that we're living by some stupid rules from a piece of paper." I didn't know what to say. Part of me agreed with her, but another part couldn't ignore the weight of them. Every rule felt like it was tied to something dangerous, something waiting for us to slip up. A few days later, we had our first real fight since moving in. It wasn't about the house, not directly anyway. It was about how I was handling things, or not handling them, according to Mia. "You're letting this place get to you," she said, pacing the living room. "You're so wrapped up in these rules, you can't even relax anymore. We can't live like this, Daniel." I didn't argue because she wasn't wrong. The house had a grip on me that I couldn't shake. It wasn't just the rules, it was everything, the knocks, the phone, the way shadows seemed to move when you weren't looking. "I'm trying," I said finally. I don't know how to explain it. It's like the house is watching us." Mia stopped pacing, her expression softening. She walked over and took my hand. "Then maybe we should fight back. Make this place ours. Stop letting it scare us." She had a point. We couldn't keep living in fear. So that night, we decided to do something normal for once. watch a movie, make popcorn, pretend the house wasn't some haunted mess of rules and dread. We were halfway through the movie when the knocking started again. It was louder this time, coming from inside the living room wall. Mia froze, the bowl of popcorn slipping from her hands. "What the hell is that?" she whispered. I didn't answer. I already knew. "If you hear knocking from inside the walls, do not respond." "Daniel," she said, her voice trembling. "Is this one of the rules?" I nodded, my eyes fixed on the wall. The knocking grew more insistent, like whatever was behind it knew we were there. "Should we do something?" Mia asked. "No," I said quickly. "We can't." She didn't like that answer, but she trusted me enough not to argue. We sat there in silence, listening as the knocking moved along the wall, growing fainter until it disappeared entirely. When it was finally over, Mia turned to me, her face pale. "What happens if we don't follow the rules?" I didn't have an answer for that. I didn't want to find out. The next morning, I woke up to find Mia sitting at the dining table, staring at a steaming cup of tea. The clock on the wall read 3:07 a.m. "Mia?" I said, my voice still thick with sleep. She didn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on the cup, her face pale and drawn. "What are you doing?" I asked, stepping closer. That's when it hit me. The tea. At exactly 3 a.m., place a cup of tea on the dining room table. "Do not drink it." I grabbed her shoulder, gently shaking her. "Mia, why are you out here? Did you drink it?" Finally, she turned to me, her eyes wide and glassy. "No," she whispered. "But I didn't put it there either." A cold shiver ran down my spine. I stared at the cup, condensation rolling down its sides. It was fresh. Someone or something had made it. Mia grabbed my arm. "What's happening, Daniel? Why would anyone leave a cup of tea here? Who would even come into the house?" I didn't know what to say. I pulled her away from the table and brought her back to the bedroom. "We'll figure this out," I promised, though I wasn't sure I believed it. For the rest of the night, neither of us slept. Every sound, every creak of the floorboards made us jump. The tea sat untouched on the table until morning, when I finally dumped it down the sink, feeling like I was pouring away something I couldn't afford to anger. The rules started to feel more suffocating after that night. It wasn't just that they were inconvenient. They felt alive, like the house was waiting for us to slip up. Mia tried to keep things light, but I could see the cracks forming. The cheerful hums while she unpacked had turned into nervous glances over her shoulder. I hated seeing her like that, and I hated even more that I couldn't do anything about it. One evening, we decided to cook dinner together, something simple, just to take our minds off things. For a little while it worked. We joked, laughed, and even danced around the kitchen as the smell of pasta filled the air. But then the power flickered. It was brief, just a second or two, but it was enough to change the mood entirely. "Probably just the wiring," I said, trying to sound casual. "This place is old." Mia didn't respond. She was staring at the doorway to the hallway, her face pale. "What's wrong?" I asked. "I thought I saw something," she said softly. "In the mirror." The mirror hung at the end of the hall, an antique piece with a tarnished silver frame. It came with the house, like so many other things. I hadn't paid much attention to it before, but now it felt off. "Let's eat," I said, pulling her back toward the table. "It's probably just the shadows playing tricks." We sat down and tried to pick up where we'd left off, but the mood was gone. Every so often, Mia's eyes flicked back to the hallway, and I could feel the tension growing between us. After dinner, as we were cleaning up, Mia suddenly stopped and turned to me. "Daniel," she said, her voice trembling, "what if we just left? Left the house, left the rules, left everything?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to grab her hand, walk out the door, and never look back. But something about the house wouldn't let me. "You know we can't," I said, though I hated the words as they came out. Mia's expression crumbled, and she turned away from me. I could hear her stifling a sob as she walked into the bedroom. That night, I left the bedroom door open, just like Rule 4 said. But as I lay there in the dark, listening to Mia's soft breathing beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house wasn't just watching us, it was pulling us apart. The following week brought a kind of uneasy rhythm. Mia and I did our best to act normal, but the house wouldn't let us forget. The tea at 3 a.m. became a nightly ritual. I didn't question it anymore. I just made sure it was there. The knocks in the walls came and went, always unacknowledged. But even when things were quiet, the tension never left. One night, Mia was already asleep when I heard it, a soft hum coming from the living room. At first, I thought it was my imagination. But as I sat up in bed, straining to hear, the sound grew clearer. It was unmistakable. Someone was humming. I froze. Do not hum or sing inside the house. The first rule. The sound wasn't coming from Mia. It was coming from somewhere else. I got up slowly, trying not to wake her. My heart pounded as I crept down the hallway, toward the source of the noise. The living room was dark, the faint hum weaving through the silence like a thread. I stepped inside, my breath catching in my throat. The mirror. The humming was coming from the mirror. I didn't dare move closer. Instead, I backed out of the room, keeping my eyes on the mirror until I was safely back in the hallway. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept the door cracked open, watching the faint glow of the hallway light until morning. When Mia woke up, I didn't tell her about the humming. I couldn't. She was already on edge, and I didn't want to make it worse. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Was it the house? My grandfather? Or something else entirely? Mia and I were in the garden when we found the box. We decided to spend the afternoon outside, trying to take a break from the house and its suffocating rules. The garden was overgrown, wild with weeds and vines, but there was something almost peaceful about it. We were pulling weeds near the fence when Mia's hand brushed against something buried in the dirt. "What's this?" she said, kneeling to dig it out. It was a small wooden box, weathered and cracked, with rusted hinges that groaned as Mia opened it. Inside was a single, folded piece of paper. Mia unfolded it carefully, her brows furrowing as she read. "It's another rule?" She handed it to me, and my stomach dropped as I read the words. "Do not trust what you see after midnight." "What does that mean?" Mia asked, her voice tinged with fear. "I don't know," I said, though the words sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't on the original list of rules we'd found in the house, but it felt just as real. Mia looked at me, her eyes wide. "Do you think your grandfather left this here? Like some kind of warning?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The house was full of warnings, some written, some unwritten. That night, as the clock ticked past midnight, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was testing us, throwing new challenges our way to see if we'd break. At some point, Mia leaned over and whispered, "What happens if we don't follow the rules? Have you ever thought about that?" I didn't respond. I didn't want to think about it, but deep down I knew the answer. The house wasn't just testing us, it was waiting for us to fail. And when we did, it wouldn't let us leave. By now, the rules weren't just guidelines, they were a way of life. Mia and I followed them as if our survival depended on it, which deep down we both knew it did. The house's hold on us had grown stronger. We rarely left, and when we did, it felt like the house called us back. One night, the tension between us finally boiled over. "I can't do this anymore, Daniel," Mia yelled, her voice trembling with frustration and fear. "This house, these rules, it's not normal. We're not normal anymore." I sat at the edge of the bed, rubbing my temples. "You think I don't know that, Mia? You think I don't want to leave? But we can't. We agreed to this. We took the house." She threw her hands up. "Agreed? To what? Living in fear of some dead man's rules? I didn't sign up for this, Daniel. I didn't sign up for any of this." Her words stung, but I couldn't argue. She was right. None of this was what we wanted. The house was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to build a life together. Instead, it had become a prison. "Mia," I said softly, reaching for her hand. "We'll figure it out. I promise." But she pulled away, shaking her head. "You keep saying that, but nothing changes. If anything, it's getting worse." Before I could respond, a loud knock echoed through the house. We both froze. The sound came again, this time louder, more insistent. "If you hear knocking from inside the walls, do not respond." Mia's eyes met mine, wide with terror. "It's coming from the bedroom wall," she whispered. We sat in silence, the knocking continuing, growing more aggressive. Don't do anything, I said firmly, grabbing her hand. But Mia's fear turned to anger. I'm done, Daniel. I'm done playing by these stupid rules. Before I could stop her, she stormed to the wall and pounded her fist against it. What do you want? She screamed. The knocking stopped. For a moment, the house was deathly silent. Then the wall began to bulge outward, like something was pressing against it from the other side. Mia, get back, I shouted, pulling her away just as the wall cracked, a black, tar-like substance oozing through the gaps. We ran out of the room, slamming the door behind us. I could hear the sound of something scraping against the walls, moving inside them, following us. We didn't sleep that night. We didn't even stay in the bedroom. We huddled in the living room, the mirror looming over us like a silent judge. The storm came 2 nights later. It started like any other storm, rain tapping against the windows, distant rumbles of thunder. But by midnight, it had become a violent tempest, shaking the house to its foundations. Mia and I sat in the living room, clutching each other as the wind howled outside. The power flickered, plunging us into darkness for a few seconds at a time. At 3 a.m., the grandfather clock in the hallway began to chime. I knew what I had to do. I'll get the tea, I said, my voice barely audible over the storm. No, Mia said, gripping my arm. Don't go out there. Stay here. I shook my head. We can't break the rules, Mia. Not now. I walked to the kitchen, the house groaning around me. As I placed the cup of tea on the dining table, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. A figure stood in the hallway, half hidden in the shadows. Mia! I called out, my voice trembling. The figure didn't move. I stepped closer, the dim light revealing more details. It wasn't Mia. It wasn't even human. The figure was gaunt, with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. It reached out a skeletal hand, beckoning me. I stumbled backward, knocking the teacup over. The figure's smile widened as it stepped toward me, its movements jerky and unnatural. Mia! I screamed, running back to the living room. But when I got there, she was gone. The front door was wide open, rain pouring in. I ran outside, the storm nearly knocking me off my feet. Mia! I shouted, my voice lost in the wind. I saw her at the edge of the garden, standing perfectly still, staring at the house. Mia, come back. I pleaded, running toward her. As I reached her, she turned to me, tears streaming down her face. He's here, Daniel, she said softly. Who's here? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The storm surged around us, and I saw him, my grandfather, his spectral form towering over us, his face a mask of rage. You broke the rules, he said, his voice echoing like thunder. Before I could react, he reached for me, his hand passing through my chest. Pain shot through me, unlike anything I'd ever felt. Daniel! Mia screamed, grabbing my arm. But it was too late. I felt myself being pulled away, my vision fading as the storm consumed me. The last thing I saw was Mia, her face twisted in anguish, as the house loomed behind her, its windows glowing with an eerie light. Now I'm here, trapped in the house, bound by the rules just like my grandfather before me. And Mia? She's still there, alone, haunted by my voice, just like I was haunted by his. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for daily horror stories that get creepier every night.